It was supposed to be a normal day at the park until everything changed. A young black teen was just sitting on a bench, minding his own business, when suddenly a white woman decided he looked suspicious. Without hesitation, she called the police, convinced she was doing the right thing. Within minutes, an officer arrived, questioning the boy as he tried to explain himself. But the woman wasn't satisfied. She kept insisting something was off, pointing fingers, her voice getting louder. The teen, confused and frustrated, had no idea why this was happening. Then, just as things were escalating, his mother arrived. But she wasn't just any mom. She was an FBI chief. The moment she stepped in, everything shifted. The woman's confidence wavered, the officer hesitated, and suddenly the situation took a turn no one saw coming. What happened next left everyone speechless and changed the conversation entirely. The air grew tense as the teen's mother walked up, her presence commanding attention. Dressed in professional attire, she carried herself with quiet authority, her eyes scanning the scene. The officer stiffened slightly, sensing something was different. The woman who made the call seemed to hesitate, her expression shifting from confidence to uncertainty. "Is there a problem here?" the mother asked, her tone calm but firm. The officer glanced at the woman, who quickly jumped in. "I was just being cautious," she said, her voice losing some of its earlier force. "He was sitting here alone, looking suspicious." The teen looked at his mother, frustration clear in his eyes. "I told them I was just waiting for you," he muttered. His mother turned back to the officer. "And that required police intervention?" she asked, crossing her arms. The officer swallowed hard, realizing this wasn't just any parent. This was someone who knew the law better than he did. The officer shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the woman and the FBI chief. He had arrived expecting a routine situation, but now the balance of power had shifted. The woman, sensing this too, forced a nervous smile. "I just thought it was odd," she said quickly. "A young man sitting here alone. I was only trying to help." The teen clenched his jaw, his patience wearing thin. "Help with what?" he asked. "I wasn't bothering anyone." His mother placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder before turning her attention back to the officer. "Did he break any laws?" she asked, her voice steady. The officer hesitated before shaking his head. "No, ma'am, we just received a call." "A call based on what?" she interrupted. "His skin color." "His presence in a public space." Her words hung heavy in the air. The officer had no real answer, and the woman's face paled. The reality of the situation was sinking in, but no one was sure what would happen next. The woman's mouth opened, then closed, as if searching for the right words. But there weren't any. The teen's mother stood firm, her sharp gaze never wavering. The officer cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "Ma'am, we were just following up on a report," he said, though even he seemed unsure of his words now. "A report based on nothing," the FBI chief responded, her voice calm but carrying undeniable authority. She reached into her blazer pocket, pulling out her badge. The gold emblem glinted in the sunlight, and the officer's eyes widened. The woman who made the call took a step back, her confidence unraveling. "I train law enforcement officers," the mother continued, stepping closer. "I know exactly how these situations unfold." Her tone sharpened. "So tell me, officer, what exactly were you planning to do if I hadn't shown up?" Silence. The officer glanced at his partner, then at the woman who started all of this. No one had an answer. The tension in the air was thick, and the weight of their choices pressed down on them. The reality of what almost happened was clear to everyone. The officer's radio crackled, breaking the heavy silence. He hesitated before answering, his voice stiff. All clear, he muttered, as if trying to downplay the situation. But it wasn't over. The woman who made the call still stood there, her arms crossed tightly, her face unreadable. Then, as if grasping at a last shred of control, she turned to the FBI chief. "Well, how was I supposed to know who you were?" she said defensively. "You can't blame me for being cautious." The teen scoffed, shaking his head. "Cautious of what?" He shot back. "Me sitting on a bench." His mother took a slow breath, keeping her composure. "You didn't need to know who I was," she said, her voice steady. "You only needed to ask yourself why you assumed the worst about my son." For the first time, the woman looked uneasy. But before she could respond, another officer approached from the distance. This time, someone higher up. The badge on his chest gleamed, and his expression was unreadable. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his eyes locking onto the first officer. The shift was immediate. The original officer straightened, suddenly nervous. The woman looked between them, uncertainty creeping into her face. Something had changed, and no one knew what was coming next. The higher-ranking officer surveyed the scene, his gaze lingering on the FBI chief's badge. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Chief Daniels," he said, his tone shifting to one of respect. The woman who made the call paled as she realized just how much authority the teen's mother actually held. The first officer cleared his throat. "It was just a misunderstanding," he said quickly, as if trying to smooth things over. But the FBI chief wasn't letting it slide. "A misunderstanding that could have gone very differently," she replied, her voice firm. "And for what? A baseless suspicion." The woman took a step back, gripping her purse tightly. I didn't mean any harm," she stammered. "I was just trying to be careful." The FBI chief nodded slowly. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before making assumptions." She turned to her son. "Let's go." Just as they were leaving, the higher-ranking officer spoke again. "Chief, if you'd like to file a formal complaint." But she shook her head. "I think they've already learned their lesson." The woman lowered her gaze, the officer sighed, and as the mother and son walked away, the weight of what had happened hung in the air. No one would forget this moment. But just when it seemed over, the teen smirked and glanced back. "By the way," he said, "I was just waiting for my mom to take me to my FBI internship." The stunned silence that followed was the perfect ending. The woman's face flushed as the teen's words sank in. She opened her mouth, but no response came. The officer beside her shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting how things had played out. The higher-ranking officer gave a small nod to Chief Daniels, acknowledging the unspoken lesson that had just unfolded. Without another word, she and her son turned and walked away, leaving behind a moment that no one would soon forget. As they reached the car, the teen finally let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was a lot, he admitted. His mother gave him a small smile. "Welcome to the real world," she said, "but never let it make you small." He nodded, thinking about everything that had just happened. Today had been frustrating, even unfair, but it also proved something important. Sometimes the best way to fight ignorance isn't with anger, but with undeniable truth.